that's the advantage of an acquisition when you really have someone with bench strength behind you, is you don't have to go to the bank, leverage all your assets, do this. You have investors that have deep pockets, and when they see something going well, they're like, I like what you've got. I like what's going on, and I'm going to support you.
So this morning we're back and we're with Jeremy Morgan, the co-founder of Krystal Klean. Is that the right way to say it?
You got it.
So
with K's, but yes.
I've had a lot of really great conversations with your brother. So I've heard a little bit about the background and the story of it. And, we want to talk about, what's happened in more recent years, but I'd love to kind of hear your rendition of the story. Krystal Klean started from very humble beginnings. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. First of all, thank you for having me here. Appreciate it. It was nice to meet you. Yeah. Krystal Klean started roughly 21 years ago. My wife, Claire, and my brother, Tony, just started knocking on doors, raised it up to about 400 accounts. After getting it to about 400 accounts, then we started acquiring companies. And over a 21-year period of time, we purchased 21 different companies. And in that process, and then after 21 years, then we ended up selling to Fleet Wash, a national company, and we've been with them for roughly 3 years. And so the first 2 years of being with Fleet Wash, they kind of left us alone and to do our own thing, and gave us some metrics to kind of meet. And then after that, on the third year, they started purchasing companies. So over the last roughly year, they purchased 7 additional companies, which has doubled our revenue, and come with its own growing pains. But that's been my last year or so. It's been going through that process.
Right.
It's really interesting taking the different brands, and we leave the brand alone for a year, and then after the year is over, and each company has a year to hit their objectives. There's about maybe 250 steps that we go through and trying to integrate them in with our systems, and with, so the different systems are talking to each other. Are the safety metrics in place? Their hiring, firing process, just start reviewing procedures and policies, and integrating to see how can we support them. Yeah. And so a lot of times, as we mentioned, it's really a psychological journey between owning your own company and then selling and working for another company. It's quite a journey that kind of happens, and in that, many times you can lose you can associate your identity with, Krystal Klean and Jeremy Morgan. Are they one and the same? And it's out of the 21 different companies that we have blended together, we've roughly sat at the table with 100 or so, and so it's maybe a 25% closing, 21% closing ratio, right? Mm-hmm. And in that, then the biggest challenge is trying to help an individual, a business owner, bridge that separation between their brand and who they are individually. So, but
and that's a big journey that you've kind of we've encapsulated into just a couple of minutes there. And it's like the full cycle, right? From just starting a business to growing it, and don't sell that short. You guys, are it's the dream story for a lot of service business owners to grow a multi-million-dollar company, and then something I think people don't even imagine possible, having a successful exit, and then a career on the other side of that. When you were growing that, Tony was telling me something the other day, and I thought this was just so fascinating. He said, when we started, he said our target was just to get to it was a guy's company you knew that was doing $300,000
right
in revenue.
Right.
And as you're going through that journey, what was that like? When did you know that you really could take something further, or was it very incremental along the way?
Well, there's definitely growth spurts, and there's plateaus all throughout that journey. And so, your plateau is mostly your own hurdles, your own intellect, the limits on where you are, and you kind of find those as you grow. But but you're right. Hitting $150,000 our first year in business, hitting $250 the next year, hitting $400 the next year. Each time the plateau just kind of And it's with like 3-4 people, generating that revenue. And then a friend's like, hey, I want to come work for you. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we can give you a job. And we gave them our job. And then we went and found a new opportunity and then developed a new scope. And after we developed a new scope, then another friend would come up and say, hey, I want to work for you. We're like, okay, well, you give them. And you just find a collection of the right people, because a company really, exists off of excellent service, excellent systems, and excellent people to run them.
Right.
And so the constant battle that everyone looks at is, can I find the right people to represent me? And then based on that, those simple steps, then what are the values of a company? And so we did a lot of brainstorming around year 10 and said, who are we, right? And that question to constantly come back to is, who are you, and who do you want to be? How do you want to change? Because you have to change constantly. And 3 values that we came with was integrity, respect, and humility. Is that every choice is going to be made in what is the highest level of integrity. If my mom was owning the store, how would I sell it, right?
Yeah.
If my mom was the customer, then how would I treat her respect-wise? Your mom is a great example of respect and humility.
Right.
No, you're not going to talk to me that way.
Right.
She always is going to be that check and balance to hold you at that level. And your mom or dad, but your parents are there to lead and guide you. And so, I definitely, as establishing those values about year 10 and coming to a place to be like, okay, this is going to be the environment that we create. This is going to be what gels us together to make us the brand, or to have the core values that we want. And then every argument or decision or disagreement that you have in that path, the journey through the company, is that you constantly weigh it against those core values. Well, you're speaking to me disrespectfully, right? And so anybody in our company could pull a red card at any time. So if you're speaking disrespectfully, then I can simply look at you and say, the way that you're speaking to me is disrespectful. That doesn't align with our core values. I'm not right. Going to sit here, and I'm not going to take that. If you want to have a humble approach and be respectful, then I'll sit there and listen, and we'll collaborate for an answer. But you need to hold your emotions under check. And so we give those core values are action points that every day we weigh our actions against and say, if mom's sitting there, how would she want to be treated, right?
Right.
And right away. And then instantly, that can be said in a meeting. It can be said in any sort of interaction. And as you have that interaction, you look and say, you're right. When someone calls you out on something like that, you have 2 options. Who the hell are you to tell me what to do, right? Option 1. We all reach for that every day, right? And this pride and this arrogance of like, I will not be controlled. I will not be led. I will not. Or the other thing is, no, I will be better. And you're absolutely right. And a check and balance that I've had over the last several years, as I've mentioned to you prior to this meeting, is Dennis Steed. He was a CEO for Ring Power, and to watch the excellence in his leadership, to watch him have a pen and paper, and I was to give a little, I guess, an introduction of who is he? Well, he's a CEO of Ring Power, right? He was my number 1 customer. And so I would go with Dennis, and I would go look at Dennis's locations to see how could I support him. But in the middle of going with Dennis and saying, Dennis, how can I support you? I watched Dennis interact with all of his team. And I watched him look at his secretary and say, Jean, how can I help you? Right? And she'd be like, oh, I've got 1 screen, but if I had 2, it would be that much better, right? And he would take the pen and paper and he would write it down, and he'd be like, you'll have the 2nd screen tomorrow, right? And to see servant leadership go into that was such an example for me, because then I saw, I want to be like that. And I saw how he led his steps. And then, Jeremy, why don't you drive? Okay, well, now I'm driving his Cadillac, and he's typing notes and going through things. And next thing you know, he has a 40-point list of everything he's going to do to support his team. Yeah. And that was real inspiration to me, because then I looked at him and I'm like, okay, then, Jeremy, how are you doing this same thing? Because you show up with joy, happiness, and he was such a light bulb when he went in to light up whatever's happening and then to serve. And really, that's what a leader's there to do, right? And that's what our call as leadership should be. And unfortunately, our political examples are very poor in this case, because the whole point of being there is to serve us and to lead us. But we know maybe it's off balance, and maybe they're not there to serve and lead us. They're more for a personal agenda. But how is Jeremy acting in this, right? How is Jeremy going to change in his little world of Krystal Klean? And is he going to make a difference for his 60 people back 3 years ago when we were purchased? Well, that's my job. My job's to show up and to be good and to be a solid leader. And I fail a lot at that. And so a check and balance that I had is, as I realized I was consistently failing in different ways of, I was short, I wasn't humble, I was prideful, I was disrespectful, right? And in those interactions of being disrespectful and prideful, I realized I really didn't like the person that I was. And I could reflect back and see the situation and be like, I don't really like that. So I asked Dennis Steed to be a life coach, a business coach. I asked him to sit there in my meetings and sit there and say, how can you do better, right? And after I would deliver my message, and I wouldn't always hear what everyone was saying. I would hear what they were saying, but I would cut them off, right? Or I'd hear what they're saying, but my way was better, right? Yeah. And so in that leadership, I would turn and deliver my message or my meeting like I did with my key people. And then each time I'll turn and say, Dennis, what can I do better? And his job is to critique me in front of the team. And I invited him, be my life coach, but be my life coach in a real situation with live bullets. Now you're in front of my team, but I want them to see if my values are truly integrity, respect, and humility, and I'm not achieving my own values. How does Jeremy get better? How does Jeremy improve and sharpen to where his team can watch him do it? Because I'm calling out my own team to be better and to be respectful and to be humble. But if I'm not leading it in myself, then I'm really a hypocrite. And I found myself being a hypocrite in a lot of those situations. So that challenge, Dennis was my check and balance. He was my, I knew greatness was already there in what I saw, and I want to be great too. And so that's my path in striving to be a great person and a great asset to society. And I have a long ways to go.
Yeah, it's a long journey, but that's really cool. I mean, it is definitely the ultimate act of humility to invite that into
publicly.
A setting like that. You know, when you're the leader, and it certainly you know we all want to be the infallible leader at times. Right. It's my way, I'm right. You know?
That's right.
And to say, well, wait, did I get that right? Could I do it better? And that's really tough. So it sounds like you've put so much effort into building this thing, and I know there had to have been a ton of personal pride in the ownership and what you had built in your business. How do you come to a point where you were ready to sell that, to let that go? And what was that like?
I think, again, just exposing vulnerabilities, but as a company starts to get successful and you have partners, it's very challenging to work with partners even as it's successful, because then you start having a pot of money, and then how do you spend the money, right? Well, then it's a perspective of, again, pride and arrogance, right? Different things. And so each of us owners had different ways that we thought this was going down, right? Well, we came with some disagreements, and through those disagreements, we're better off not being partners, because we're 21 years deep and we're at each other's throats about what and how, and we just different pulls in different directions. So we really had a conversation. Dennis Steed was very much, sitting at the table with us, and he's like, guys, I think it's time for you to sell, right? And that was a crucial turning road for us, is that we just were so toxic with each other, not holding to our values, not holding to different things. We had different directions. And so I think, we went that 21 years. We had a lot of success. We've traveled the world. We got nice homes. When you have everything you need, then what's next, right?
Right.
And in that process, there's so many people that have everything they need, but they lose their family, and they lose it because they're quarreling or arguing over something stupid, right? And then there's this separation, and it's amazing how stuff and money is much to do with that separation, right? So my brother Tony, he looked at me and he said, I'd much rather be a brother to you than a business partner, because I don't like you right now, right? And in that process of going through that, we realized it was time. It was time. And so we kind of courted a few different companies. And in courting those companies, as we went through that process, we identified several buyers. Fleet Wash was one of those buyers. And as we went through that process with them, I was very interested to see what and how did that leadership propose the transition, right? How were they interested in bridging this? Because my dad works for us, my aunt does payroll, my brothers works for us. We do rope descension, swing stage scaffolding, aerial work platforms. High risk. A lot of our work is high risk. You can't make a mistake. A mistake means you die, right? In that, you have to understand that you're going to be supported in your systems, right? You're going to be supported in these things. And this company buying us didn't quite have the knowledge. They don't hang from ropes, swing state. They don't do these particular skill sets, right? And so in that, we needed to know we were going to be supported. And I won't forget the meetings that I had with Vito, the owner of Fleet Wash, and he sat there and he said, "Jeremy, I'm not in here to get more contracts. I'm in here to find the right people to represent me. I'm in here for you to know that if something is going well, I'm going to pay attention to it. And your profit margins and your company is something I want for me, but even more, I want you and your team. I want the people in your team to represent."
Yeah.
And I said, "Vito, this is crucial because my average leader's been with me 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
And they're my family, right? My family is they've showed up. They've had good salaries, good means of taking care of their families, and so they trust me. Their paychecks are there every other week. There's zero exception. They are paid. If I have to take the money out of my house, that's what happens. And they need that consistency of leadership to see that no matter what it takes, I will take care of them if it costs me something." And so I saw that same hunger in Vito. I saw that same drive and the fact that I will take care of your family. And how he went about, I said, well, let's talk to my dad. What will we do? Well, what would you like him to do, right? And so this is what he's currently doing, and it's like, then he should continue doing that. And, well, what about the Christmas party, Vito? We have, probably between our Christmas bonuses and everything, it's a $30,000 event. What do we do? Well, we should probably keep doing our Christmas parties, right? And he's like, he goes, don't change anything. He goes, Jeremy, the success of this and the reason you're able to have a 25% profit margin is simply because the culture that you've created and the value that you've given your team and how that drills down to it. And because he valued the culture and he valued the different elements that went into supporting our company, and he understood that, he wasn't interested in changing and stirring things up so much. He was like, you just keep doing what you're doing. And the question that came to the table after they bought us was, how can we support you, right? We came on with $4.5 million worth of assets because lifts are expensive, trucks are expensive. Our average truck's $135,000 to set up, but it pressure washes, soft washes, vacuums. There's a myriad of different things that we do with those trucks. And so coming in with the $4.5 million, over the last 3 years, we're now sitting at almost a $9 million fleet. That's a lot of money. They're willing to sit there and say, okay, Jeremy, how can we support you? How can we support Krystal Klean and your family? What can we do? And I'm like, I need $1.5 million because I need to spend it this way. And they're like, here's a check, right? Go spend your money.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank you, right? That's the advantage of an acquisition when you really have someone with bench strength behind you, is you don't have to go to the bank, leverage all your assets, do this. You have investors that have deep pockets, and when they see something going well, they're like, I like what you got. I like what's going on, and I'm going to support you. And in this, I've had these 7 different companies over the last year that Fleet Wash has said, okay, we're going to grow your brand. I'm like, oh boy. And then they started buying smaller companies, and I got in the acquisition team with my brother Tony, and so we started working on identifying companies to purchase. And like I said, this last year has been near doubling the size of our company and acquiring 7 brands all in the same time. I was very much like, okay, keep it simple, stupid. One business at a time, transition this, take a year to do it.
Yeah.
Well, try taking 7 companies and just completely doubling everything. It's just like, if you feel like a piece of Laffy Taffy, just stretched.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
And you're constantly going to everyone else, and each leader, and you're helping stabilize them. And now my job is, okay, now I'm Vito. right? And as I'm Vito, I have to pass the message along to my team. I'm like, listen, I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you. What can I do? You need a truck? It's on its way. What else do you need? How can I help you, right? And my job is to do what was been done to me. And so I had a great leadership. I had great support, and so I know how to support, right? And so just that confidence that they've given me as to what you need, you'll get. And so this last week I asked for another $1.5 million. I said, I see this. I got 7 different divisions. I want everyone to have the appropriate tools. This is how it will be split up. It's like, how can I help you, right? Mm-hmm. That question there constantly. And then as they spend, we're having record months and we're producing profit. And that's ultimately, if you're producing good profit for a company, then you share that profit, right, too. And so what's been exciting is most of our leaders make a piece of what they do. And so if they grow, we grow. And on that stool, there's 3 principles: take care of your customer, take care of your employees, take care of the owners. Yeah. And every time you come to the crossroads, and when you're coming to this crossroads, you say, is this decision in support of all? Well, no, we're gypping the customer. Well, maybe we need to redial it back and take care of the customer. Is the employee making minimum wage? We might have a problem, right? Yeah. And so is the owner losing money on this one because the employee sold it but didn't think about what the cost would be to the owner? Are they making decisions? And so every single decision that comes down to it, weigh it against your values, weigh it against that 3-legged stool, weigh it against these multiple benchmarks that say, is this a successful choice for all parties? And that's what we're raising leaders in our company. We're raising people that will think through all of these things, that they will think through that choice of, is it taking care of the owners or not? Because so many employees are like, he's a big boss, he can do anything, he's got all this. And I'm like, wait a minute. If every choice is in not support of the owner, we have a problem. Yeah. Just like if every choice is in support of the employee, we have a problem. Right. And I'll remind, because we're peace-driven, sometimes an employee will come up and they'll be, hey, I didn't do very well. I'm like, no, you didn't. But what I'm going to do is print out 3 weeks worth of paychecks, and I'm going to take an average. I want to show you, you made an average of $60 an hour over these last 3 weeks. So let's not get greedy in the last few days, right? Again, the values, going back to humility and truth and integrity. Let's play this all out and look at what this 3 weeks looks like. Almost every single time that someone comes to complain, it's because you get greedy. You get used to making that really nice paycheck, and then there's a cost. And it's like, well, does the owner take the dirty end of the stick every time? Is it? Or are you going to help lift and support and make sure the owner does make something this month? Because the owner's in this to make a profit too, right? Yeah. And so now it's like, hey, and so in that balance, I want everyone to think like an owner. I want every single person to think, is it customer, employee, and owner all together, collaborate that. So
it seems like you've had a really successful transition. Yes. Over the last few years. And I would have to imagine that most people don't imagine that as a possibility. But what was that like? I mean, I'm sure it was a very emotional experience going from being your thing to transitioning to be a part of a larger team. What was that experience like for you to go through that process? Was it hard?
Yeah, any change is hard. Yeah. So I get to exercise humility again, right? Do I want to submit to another leader and to do this? Well, at times I'm used to being the boss, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have to surrender certain of my pride and different things and realize, okay, I'm used to winning a lot of the times, but right now it's time for me to listen. And so I would say that leading or learning to be a leader is learning to listen more, learning to not have all the answers, and learning to let your team be creative. Yeah. And so I mean, yes, you have the employee, the owner, and the customer, but the big change was me changing from an owner to an employee, right? Now all of a sudden I'm sitting on a different leg of the stool. Yeah. And so in that different leg of the stool, now I'm accountable in a different way. And after 21 years of calling the shots and saying this is how it's going to be a lot of times, and realizing I still have the liberty as a manager of this division to say time out. You're compromising safety, A, B, or C, or time out. It's costing profit margins. That's going to affect me and you, right? And so I get to still pull a red card. And but once a week, I meet with corporate, and I go through this growing pains of listening and being able to speak at the same time, and collaboration, right? And so I've probably been their troubled child a lot of times because I always have something to say. But I think we've kind of found our balance is that I'm like, I really have to engage myself in listening to my boss in the same way that I listen to my customer. And someone's like, hey, you haven't had a boss. Well, no, I've had 12,000 bosses because every customer is my boss. And whenever they call, it's like, how can I help you? Right? And that's the attitude of how can I help you? Well, I have to maintain that same attitude with my new boss as the owner. I have to maintain that same attitude with him as how can I help you? And as long as I have that hunger and that challenge to understand that this also is my customer along with this. And so Jerry told me last week, why did you ping me a meeting here, and why did you engage me in this and this? And I'm like, Jerry, I just wanted you to see. You asked for that. I'm on it, right? And Jerry needs to see that. And then what is Jerry going to do, right? Well, Jerry's going to be okay. All right, he's listening to me, right? I'm asking for something. He's doing it. I'm being heard. Ultimately, every human wants to be heard, whether it's our customer, whether it's our boss, whether it's our employee. Everyone wants to be heard. And if we're heard, and we know we're heard, and we know our opinion matters, then in that case, what ends up happening is the culture changes, right? And so Dennis Steed is very instrumental in changing our culture, because we said we know we're not there. We know we're suffering on our own from our own values, and we're missing the mark on where we want to be. But I want a good life coach to help me get there. I want someone to help me grow up and be a better person. And that's what Dennis Steed's been for us.
So I have one more question for you.
Fire away.
Someone hears this and they think, I'd like to sell my company. I'd like to go through this process. What advice would you give to successfully go through the transition? You guys bought companies when you were growing. You've been through the process of selling your company. You've been through the process of acquiring companies in a more formal, on a bigger stage. What advice would you give somebody to have a successful transition from it's my business to going through this process of selling?
Well, it's kind of funny you mention that, because I literally, since I've sold, I've had dozens of people come up and ask me this question. What would you do? How would you do it differently? And there's one thing that I say right up front. Don't ever deal in cash. Be legitimate on your books. Do everything as if your mom was looking. My first couple years in business, I was like, hey, how can I try to fudge this or hide this or do this? And one person looked at me and he said, listen, one business coach, he goes, you will have plenty of tax advantages by just putting all your revenue down and not trying to hide anything and play games with the IRS. Be transparent, lay it out there, and put it the way it is, right? The more that you start running off of a true profit and loss and a true balance sheet, and you do not allow yourself to deal in cash, but you allow yourself to have total transparency, it allows you to know what you're dealing with, right? And I know that my first couple of years is I've just had so much cash sitting there and this and that, and you lose perspective on you not measuring it, and you can't grow what you can't measure, right? So from the very beginning, is keep a solid set of books. And if you don't have a good accountant or a good CPA that can help you, to have your books clean and to know, when I sold, I knew I had $4.5 million worth of assets. I knew that to the penny, what it was, where it was, right? I knew what my profit margins was. I didn't try to hide things. I was just kept above board at all times. That counsel in the very beginning was one of the main things. So now I have a 20-year graph to know, what did I do every year revenue-wise? What did I do profit-wise? It's not up here, right? It's amazing how many people have come up to me, and as soon as I've said that, they close their eyes and walk away. 8 out of 10 will close their eyes and walk away because they're all trying to hide something. This is a huge problem. A huge problem, because if we all were transparent with what we did and how we ran our company, and we did not try to hide our taxes, a lot of these problems would naturally be resolved with society, right? But Then once you have that basis of I have a solid company and it's ready, what these companies that are trying to buy you and merge you have to do, if you have not done that, is they will go in and clean up your books. And as they clean up your books, they're going to try to determine your value. Well, they don't have a very hard job to do if you do your job right? They can come in and very quickly make you an offer on your company. So after your books are set in place, that's step one. Step two is, like I said, 21 companies we merged with, but we sat at the table with 100. And in sitting at the table with 100, the lesson learned is that Jeremy Morgan, Krystal Klean. Most people take the name, your personal name and your brand that you have been working on, and they merge it together. And how do you transition releasing Krystal Klean? No, Krystal Klean is not Jeremy Morgan. It is something I have worked on, but it's not like the raccoon with the hand in the cookie jar. You can't let go. 80% of people can't let go. And this one story I told you before of this 82-year-old man. I sat at the table with him, $2 million company. And I said, he goes, I want you to buy my company. I want you to. And I'm like, okay, I want to buy your company. I've looked at your numbers. They're good. I'm ready to buy your company. And he goes, okay, this is how it's going to go. You're going to apprentice me. You're going to do this. It's going to take 4 years. And I said, time out, sir. I said, with all respect, I've done this 18 times now, right? I understand it's a very hard decision for you, but if you sell your company to me, you will be handing me the steering wheel. At the point you hand me the steering wheel, you will be my coach. You will help keep me between the bumpers, but I will be the one that is leading and guiding this. Are you able to make this transition? And he paused and looked at me, and his eyes got really big, and he said, I can't. And it was a huge lesson for me, because a year later this man died, and I bought his assets, his swing stage, his things for $10,000 from his wife, and the business is nothing now, right?
Yeah.
If you cannot transition this, if you cannot transition a company and let it go and realize there's much more to Jeremy Morgan than Krystal Klean. Krystal Klean is a stepping stone for Jeremy Morgan, but Krystal Klean is not Jeremy Morgan. It is different.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be separated, but still. So then how do you transition Krystal Klean as a value for other people to enjoy, or value for other people to benefit and grow and to release control of it, right? And so that's been a hard process, right? And that's still, for me, it's still a struggle, because I've realized the psychology and watching these different individuals go through releasing it. And many of them are like, I'm done, right? And just walk away. Well, then they try to find themselves all over again, right? And then it's all of a sudden I'm retired. All of a sudden I'm here. And then who am I? Well, many times after retirement, people die. Many times after this transition, because that was everything for 20 years. And who am I, right? And so you go through a whole new exploration. So the question is, how do you go through this process? Find the right fit that will have the best success ratio for your team. Right? Find the best, who is going to, like Vito, unquestionably, when he sat down and looked at me in the eyes and he goes, I'm not here after your contracts. I'm here after your people. And I'm here for you, Jeremy. I want you to help me transition this. I want to enable you to take this to a new level. I will take care of your family. I'm like, well, how long? Fine. I'm a businessman. How long will you do it, Vito? Yeah. For 3 years, I'll leave you untouched. Oh, you will? Yes, I will. And this is how, and he did it. I'm sorry, 2 years. 2 years he left me untouched. This third year was my year of challenge. So 2 years he left me untouched, and he let me run the company going in the way, because he's like, I don't want to upset the apple cart. You have a lot of things going. Your profit margins are strong, and in profit margins strong. Even in COVID, there was a huge organic growth that happened because we clean and coat things, we sanitize things, and they're just like, how can I help? I literally had 12 meetings for that first year, and it was with Robert, their CFO. Looked over my books, had a few questions, what about this? I answered 6 questions. I could always answer exactly what was going on because I know the shape of my company. I could put my finger on everything, had an answer for him. 30 minutes later, we'd get off the call, talk to you next month. right?
Yeah.
So to have that kind of support, that's a rare thing. Many times companies try to acquire you, take your assets, and flush the liabilities. The old corporation flushed sometimes the owner. Well, I think in that transition is to find the value of who's going to allow you to grow and change with it, what's going to be the right culture, and to watch how Fleet Wash valued our culture and how they said there's something genius in every single company we bought. Absolute genius. And our whole mission in acquiring companies is to exercise, find out what that gem was, and
Right.
then to learn that lesson, take the lessons learned, and push it to our whole company, right? To take the greatness that came from that. And there's some things that our team does very, very well. And so it kind of gives us our niche, but that rope descension, swing stage scaffolding, and the hard to get to places. If you need it clean and it's in a hard to get to place, we're your company. And we'll go anywhere and do that. But we have the best team, and they know how to, high dusting. There's so many things that you could go, bunny trails they could go down. But.
Sure. Well, another conversation. We'll have to have another chat about some of that. Do you think that there's something that you could do, looking back on it, looking back on this identity shift that you've gone through? Is there something that you could have known or done in the beginning that would have made it easier, or is it just something you just kind of have to go through the somewhat painful process?
Unquestionably, you're going to have to go through this painful process. You want the right people to support you guys.
Yeah.
You want your Dennis Steeds. You want your Vitos. You want to know in life you can make any transition happen if you are valued, right? And if you are valued, who is it that you want to be like? Who are your idols? Yeah, Tom Brady for so many, right? Because it's football. But wait a minute, who is it? Your mom? Most of us have your mom, your dad, right? A few key idols in our life. Who do you want to be next to? Mm-hmm. Who do you want to be like? Mm-hmm. What are the characteristics that you want to achieve that they do? How can you get there? Like humility. I've got a lot of pride. Well, in order to break through that pride, I have to have the right coaches that will lead me to humility, right? I have to identify that I have a problem. Like if an alcoholic, what do? They have to first say, hey, I'm an alcoholic. Well, if I'm a prideful person, I have to first start off with getting to the point that I'm prideful. Then I have to walk my way out of that pride into a place of humility that I can truly be an asset to society. And if I never make it, then I'm a prideful person for the rest of my life. And so this transition in a company and in growing a company and it's more about the culture. It's more about the commitment to a respectful, humble culture that has integrity at its core. And if you have a company that has integrity at its core, then you can do anything. I mean, I'm a window cleaner, right? And that's what they're like, what do you do? I clean glass, right?
Yeah.
And because what do I have to, well, I'm not Tom Brady. I don't play football. I can barely throw a football, right? But I can clean glass. And so I'm one step above a toilet cleaner. Yeah. Well, one funny story is Tony and I, my brother and I, we always said we're a window cleaner, one step above a toilet cleaner.
Yeah.
Right. So we start doing a lot of work for Walmart and Sam's in the Southeast United States. And we're doing all these pressure washing points. And they're like, guys, you're doing a great job on these 7 different points. We have an 8th point for you. You've got to master cleaning our restrooms. I was like, oh, Lord, God almighty. You walk into a Walmart restroom, and what is it? It's like waste and cleaning supplies mixed very strong.
Yeah, right.
And so you walk in and you're like, oh, no. Well, and the things that you see inside, they're just disgusting, But I said, okay, we'll overcome that problem for you. And I started going into a deep clean on a bathroom. What do you need to deep clean a bathroom, right? We overcame that problem, found the best $50,000 steam clean system, came in 30 minutes, we could clean a restroom from beginning, disinfect the entire thing, let it sit for a few minutes. Next, come in with steam clean it, and then pick up all the waste and put it down the toilet. And so, but as Tony and I were going through that process, we're both like reaching around a toilet, right?
Yeah.
Going down there, taking some of the stains down, and we just looked over at each other and just lost it because we said, we're no longer window cleaners, a step above toilet cleaners. We are at the base.
Yeah. Oh.
And so that was a lesson in humility to say, don't ever say you're not going to do something because you're gonna.
Right. That's a very good lesson. Oh, that's a very good lesson.
It was. This journey's been good, and since then, since we've sold, my brother and I have had some space from each other too, and there's been more in our relationship that has been built back, and so we've learned to value being brothers, and sometimes we might not always be the best business partners, right? And so at a certain point, it's very good to see this transition. And my brother bought a farm, up north of town, and has animals and whatnot, and so we both are very blessed to have so much, both in relationships and resources and everything. We have a lot of support and a lot of good things. So it really makes it extremely rewarding to be sitting where we are. And
Absolutely.
Just try never to take it for granted. Just try to continue to grow. And now I'm in a new chapter. It's like, okay, I'm asking myself the same thing. Who am I? Mm-hmm. Who am I? Where am I going? Because I'm not stopping now. Right. It's going to be another level. There's going to be, and that's what, I sit there with Fleet Wash. I'm like, hey, this is where I can do it. My division's at 16 million. I see the $50 million goal. I know where we can get there, and these are the steps that I need to do to get there. And yes, we're a $200 million company, and it's great to be a large portion of that and to be a piece in the system. It's an asset to them, and so we've hit our goal of being their largest division, and now what's the next goal? We got to set new goals,
Right.
So it never stops.
I love hearing this story, because I think this is kind of like the ultimate how good this can turn out. How good transitioning to a new step can be. And I've appreciated the conversation. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we can do it again sometime and chat about something else that's been super interesting.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks again for watching this episode. Again, if you'd like to reach out to Tony or I, you maybe just want to ask some questions one-on-one, you don't want to do it in the comments, visit yourexitplan.net. We'd love to talk to you about your exit strategy, build the right plan for your business. But anyway, thanks again for watching. Do make sure to subscribe, so we'll see you next week.